This is on the side of consciousness. Yeah.
Correct.
So,
Right.
talking about the consciousness, he has decided. Now he has to decide about the actions. What action is possible in the interconscient? So, let's read. This is on the side of consciousness.
Okay,
So,
Rangadal. I'm reading.
yeah, go ahead. You read. Yeah, you read.
This is on the side of consciousness. On the side of action of the cosmic energies, it is seen that they move in masses, waves, currents, constantly constituting and reconstituting beings and objects, movements and happenings, entering into them, passing through them, forming themselves in them, throwing themselves out from them on other beings and objects. Each natural individual is a receptacle of these cosmic forces and a dynamo for their propagation. There passes from each to each a constant stream of mental and vital energies, and these run too in cosmic waves and currents, no less than the forces of physical nature. All this action is veiled from our surface mind's direct sense and knowledge, but is known and felt by the inner being, though only through a direct contact. When the being enters into the cosmic consciousness, it is still more widely, inclusively, intimately aware of this play of forces. But although the knowledge is then more complete, the dynamization of this knowledge can only be partial. For while a fundamental or static unification with the cosmic self is possible, the active dynamic unification with cosmic nature must be incomplete. On the level of mind and life, even with the loss of the sense of a separate self existence, the energisms must be in their very nature a selection through individualization. The action is that of the cosmic energy, but the individual formation of it in the living dynamo remains the method of its working. For the very use of the dynamo of individuality is to select, to concentrate, and formulate selected energies and throw them out in formed and canalized currents. The flow of a total energy would mean that this dynamo had no further use, could be abolished or put out of action. Instead of an activity of individual mind, life, body, there would be only an individual but impersonal center or channel through which the universal forces would flow unimpeded and unselected. This can happen, but it would imply a higher spiritualization far exceeding the normal mental level. In the static seizure of the cosmic knowledge by identity, the subliminal universalized may feel itself one with the cosmic self and the secret self of all others. But the dynamization of that knowledge would not go farther than a translation of this sense of identity into a greater power and intimacy of direct contact of consciousness with all, a greater, more intimate, more powerful, and efficient impact of the force of consciousness on things and persons, a capacity too of an effective inclusion and penetration, of a dynamized, intimate vision and feeling, and other powers of cognition and action proper to this larger nature.
Quite a big para. And to understand this para, we have to remember that the image of the sea and the waves is very useful. Okay, the sea is a cosmos. You, me, and all the others are waves, very small, limited formations of this vast sea. And sea of what? Sea of mental thoughts, sea of vital energies, sea of subtle physical forces. Okay, they're all mixed together. Okay, and you are a wave, and you are a wave. You have also got a mind, you have got a vital, and you have also got a body. So it's the same thing. This sea is a triple sea, triple in one. Okay, so this is what you have to remember. Now, if you remember this, what he's saying becomes very clear. Also remember that the wave is a very limited part of the sea. The wave does not control the sea. The sea controls the wave. The sea decides what this wave shall be, whether it should be big, whether it should be small, what will be its height, whether at what speed it is moving. It is the universe that decides. Okay, remember that. When you go to this the spiritual levels of consciousness and you have the experience of the Brahman, then you realize that you are nothing. You are just a puppet in the hands of nature. Now, remember that. And then he's describing how all these forces are interacting with each other and affecting you and the individual also. Okay. Now that wave, when its formation is finished, it comes on the shore and breaks, then there's no more wave, it has become the sea. So the individual, you, me, and I, can also become the universal consciousness. Okay, we can become universal consciousness in mind. We can become universal energy in the vital, and we can also become the universal subtle physical. Remember that, because the subtle physical is more difficult to imagine. But if I remind you about that yogi who felt the animal being bitten by a whip, the whip marks came on his own back. Then you can understand the cosmic consciousness, how you can feel even at the subtle physical level, you can be one with the universe. Okay, so now again, I think it's quite a complicated para with the words and all. So let's do the summary first. Then we get the basic idea and then we'll look at the sentences. 1 second. And bring it down.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes, you can. Certainly.
You know, if we go horizontally, we can reach the psychic being. If we go vertically, we can go into the spiritual levels up to the overmind. But
Okay.
in which direction do you go to open to the cosmic consciousness?
Both. You can have a cosmic. That's what he has told you earlier in the earlier para. The cosmic consciousness in the intraconscient, the horizontal, is also there. It is possible, but it is incomplete. And up also, it is there. You can go up also. You can have that also. Both are possible. He said that very clearly in the previous para. Okay. So I'm reading the summary. Okay. Somebody is saying, we have examined the subliminal nature relating to knowledge and consciousness. But what about force? What about action? What about movement? So, subliminal. In the subliminal, we see forces moving in massive waves. Actually, you can see these. When you are in the cosmic consciousness, you can actually see these waves. Okay? Just once again. Yeah. 1 second. Yeah. In the subliminal, 1 second again, I'm sorry. Yeah. In the subliminal, we see forces moving in massive waves, currents constantly entering into entities. The sea is entering into the waves. Okay. The mental thoughts are entering into your mind. The vital energies are entering into your vital. Okay. Even subtle forces, physical, are entering into you. Gross physical forces are of course entering into you. When you eat, okay, you are the universe is entering into you, changing them. Okay, changing you. Remember, re-emerging, coming out themselves, now changed or unchanged. All this is possible. Okay? The forces are entering into you. A mind enters into your mind. Sorry, a thought enters into your mind, and you can process it and again send it out into the universe, or it can come out without being processed. So all this is saying. I'm reading that again. In the subliminal, we see forces moving in massive waves, currents, constantly entering into entities. The sea is entering into the wave. thoughts are entering into your mind, changing them. Your mind gets changed or need not be changed. It re-emerges themselves. They re-emerge themselves, now changed or unchanged. This vast interaction of cosmic and individual forces in its sea of mentality, vitality, and even subtle physicality. Okay? Each individual receives these forces, is molded by them, and he re-exports them variously, changed or unchanged. All these mental and vital waves are mixing, clashing, shaping, being shaped. You are shaping them and they are shaping you. Okay? Man is normally unconscious of these forces, but the subliminal recognizes them all. So, when a thought enters into you, if it's a very powerful thought, your whole life can change. So it is changing you. Or you may deny it also. So you may, in any case, you're changing. Sometimes it may not change you at all. This is what he's saying. And we are not conscious of these forces, these thoughts entering into us. But when you enter into the intraconscious, the subliminal, then you recognize that this is what is happening. Okay? Man is normally unconscious of these forces, but the subliminal recognizes them all. In other words, when you are in the subliminal, you will see all these forces. But the knowledge of these forces is passive. Okay? It has no power. Knowledge of these forces is passive. That's why I said in the beginning of the para, we have dealt with the knowledge, okay, and consciousness. But now let us see about the action, about the power. If I have the knowledge, can I put that to use in the physical world? That's what he's discussing. To translate this knowledge into effective action by the individual is not easy. Passive knowledge is great, but the dynamization of that consciousness remains partial, incomplete. It needs a greater spiritual ascent. So, Yasmin's question, what is whether we can get the cosmic consciousness? Yes, you can get it in the subliminal, but its power is less. But if you go into the spiritual ascent, vertically up, then the power is more. But the power there also there's a limitation. At the higher mind, there's a limitation. It becomes slightly less limited when you go to the element mind. It becomes even less limited when you go to the intuition. Finally, at the overmind level, it is more powerful. But the absolute power comes only at the supramental level. Okay. So this is remember the gradation. Gradation is always important. I keep saying that because you must remember that there is a gradation for everything, horizontally as well as vertically. But the dynamization of that, dynamization means using that knowledge in the physical world. That's what he's saying. Of that consciousness remains partial, incomplete. You can have power, but how much of it is really successful? It needs a greater spiritual ascent. You remember I told you about this Ramdos testing his power? You first see a crow sitting on a branch, and when his power is not sufficient, the crow will obey him, will go to wherever Srimando wants him to go. But after some time, so finally he will go. But if your power is great, it will have to fly immediately to where it is told to go. Okay? All these experiments Srimando has tried out. Is there in the record of yoga. Okay. This is because there are cosmic forces, mental forces, vital forces, and physical forces. But acting in the physical world through individual limited formations. The huge wave that is there in the cosmos, when it comes into you, it becomes a small thing because a huge wave can't enter your small mind. How can a large table enter a room which is got a very small door? It can't come in. So exactly in the same way, when it comes into you, it has to reduce itself. And therefore the power gets reduced. That's what he's saying. Since the individual is limited, form bound, the cosmic forces become also restricted, diminished, and selected, trimmed to the proportionate requirement of the individual. If the individual is great and open, then the power can come in more. But if it is very, very restricted, the power will reduce itself and become proportionate to the requirement of the individual. Otherwise, the individual will be blown off. Okay. So nature is very kind. But sometimes it does happen that the large force enters the limited individual, and the individual will lose his mental balance. That also can happen. Okay. If the cosmic force could act in the physical world with its native and original power, there would be no need of the multiplicity, the infinite many in the physical world. In other words, when the individual is there, by definition, the individual is limited. So the cosmos has to limit itself to act in the individual. That's what he's saying. Very easy to understand that. The static knowledge and power cannot retain their full effectivity and impact at the physical individual level. That requires a greater ascent to a higher level of existence. And the higher you go, the more power you have. Okay? This is what he's saying in the para. So now we can look at the language that he's using. That will be very, very useful. Okay. Oh, just 1 second. I've lost the page. I'll get it. 563, right? Yeah. Delete. 563. 563. My system is very slow. I'm going to upgrade it. I hope it succeeds. Yeah. So I'm reading each sentence now. We have some time. It is 20, we have about 15 minutes. We can finish the para. This is on the side of consciousness, knowledge. Okay, that's what it means. On the side of action of the cosmic energies, it is seen that they move in masses, waves, currents. He has used 3 words. Okay, it can be massive, it can be wave, it can be a current. Okay, mass is the biggest, wave is slightly smaller, and current is even smaller. So it can come in various sizes. That's what it means. Okay. Otherwise, you would not use 3 words. Currents, constantly constituting, reconstituting beings and objects. Now, that's interesting. Now, just think about it. These waves are coming and they are constituting beings. Insects, animals, human beings, they are all being constituting and reconstituting, constantly changing you. If you think of your physical body, it becomes very obvious. Because your physical body, when you are born, you are only 7-pound baby. But as you keep growing up, you become more and more, more or less, depending on the individual, it goes on changing. So you are being, even your body is being constituted and reconstituting. Sometimes you also lose weight. Okay, so this is what's happening. But it is not only physical, it's also happening at the vital level and the mental level. You grow. Okay. So, beings and objects, even movements are affected by this and happenings. So even events in the world can be changed. Okay. So happenings, events, entering into them, passing through them, forming themselves in them, throwing themselves out from them on other beings and objects. Now, pay attention to each word, what he's saying. These forces, what they do. Okay. Think of the force and the individual. So these forces are, let's take only thought, because otherwise it becomes very complicated. But it is happening at the level of thought, vital emotions, as well as physical. So just to explain the passage, we will take it only as thought. Okay. A thought entering your mind. So, passing through them. One thought comes into your mind and passes through. Okay, that's one. Leaving no trace of it in your mind. It is just passed through. But forming themselves in them. In other words, that thought from outside comes in and it becomes very precise in your own mind. Okay? A suggestion comes from outside and it becomes precise, forming themselves in them. In them, the beings and the objects. Okay? Throwing themselves out from them on other beings and objects. So, in the synthesis, very clearly, if you remember, a thought is coming into you and you are getting affected by it, and in turn, you throw out that same thought or your own thought. You can also manufacture thoughts in yourself, okay? And you can throw out. So this is what's happening all the time. Constant interaction between the universe and you. Okay? Entering into them, passing through them, forming themselves in them, throwing themselves out from them on other beings and objects. This we see, I can give you examples also of how a thought comes out and enters everywhere into each, whichever mind is receptive, that thought enters into them. That's the reason why even when Jagadish Chandra Bose was discovered that he can a radio wave from one, he can send it to another object 10 meters away. There was the same, but he did not discover the radio, but he had already discovered the principle. But he was an Indian, not and a Bengali at that. So he was not at all interested in commercializing his idea. But Marconi in Italy, he commercialized the idea, made a radio and started making a patent and making money out of it. So this is what happens. Thoughts are entering into minds, okay? And you are also exporting your thoughts into the universe. And it's very interesting what he said in the synthesis. I'm going into detail because then you can connect what he's saying. When this thought is entering into you, it can be like a finished product with a very clear idea. Okay, it's like a pakka finished car entering into India. Okay, or it can be that the car is only, you are importing only the parts of the car and assembling the car in your own country. So exactly in the same way, bits and pieces of knowledge may come into your mind and you will constitute them into a theory. And then you can export this theory out of your own mind. So it can enter into you as a finished product. It can enter into you as a semi-finished product, or it can even enter into you as a raw material. These words are all Srebno's words, not mine. Okay? This is what happens at the mental level. It can also happen at the vital level, and to a certain extent, even in the physical, subtle physical level. So, I'm reading the next sentence. Each natural individual. Now, note that natural individual. In other words, belonging to nature. That's what it means. Each natural. Natural, not in the sense of naturally it is like that. Okay, not in that sense. Okay, but natural means relating to nature. This sea is a natural product of the. Sorry, the wave is a natural product of the universe. That's what it means. Each natural individual is a receptacle, a receiving station of these cosmic forces and a dynamo for their propagation. So on the one hand, you are receiving, and on the other hand, you are exporting. Okay, so throwing themselves. Again, I go back to that Indian idea, which is not there in the West, okay, of incoming and outgoing. Incoming is through your senses, and that is the Jnanendriyas and the Karmendriyas. So this idea is not there in the West at all. This constant movement between the universe and the individual. Okay? Each natural receptacle, individual receptacle is a receptacle, a vessel, okay, that's what I mean, of these cosmic forces and a dynamo for their propagation. You are also exporting. Okay? There passes from each to each a constant stream of mental and vital energies. We are discussing for understanding, we are discussing only thought, but it can also be vital energy, emotions, okay? And violent emotions are even mild emotions. constant interchanges there. And these run too in cosmic waves and currents, no less than the forces of physical nature. As we said right in the beginning, these waves can be mental waves, they can be emotional waves, they can even be subtle physical waves. All this action is veiled from our surface being. One second. All this action is veiled from our surface mind's direct sense and knowledge. But it is known and felt by the inner being. The inner being is the one that is in the intraconscious. The outer being is your normal mind, normal vital, and normal body. But the inner being is the Manomaya Purusha, Pranamaya Purusha, and even Annamaya Purusha. Mind's direct sense and knowledge, but it is known and felt by the inner being, though only through a direct contact. So, direct contact, not with senses. When the being enters into the cosmic consciousness, it is still more widely, inclusively, intimately aware of this play of cosmic forces. So, even in the interconscious, you can have a cosmic consciousness. But although the knowledge is then more complete, the dynamization of this knowledge can only be partial. The knowledge that you get in the intraconscious, you cannot use it fully in the physical world. To a certain extent, you can, okay, but not always. As I told you, what sort of power, okay? So I gave you the example of that, very easy to understand, Sadhguru. He had, after his experience, what happened was one day he was saying, in a garden, he was seeing a mango tree, and he thought that it would be nice if that mango fell, and I could take it. And it did fall. So he was surprised. He said, "Arey, I just thought of it and it fell." So he said, "Okay, is this a power?" So what he did, he said, "Okay, I want that other mango also to fall." And it fell. And he repeated this 5-6 times and realized that he had a power. But you are making a mango fall. But can you make the tree fall? No. That is limited. So that's the limitation that Srimati is talking about. The power is not fully effective. It is partly effective. But although the knowledge is then more complete, the dynamization, the effective use of it, dynamization of this knowledge can only be partial. Or while a fundamental or static unification with the cosmic self is possible, remember, when you are in the cosmic consciousness, your consciousness is static, okay? Immutable. Remember that. The mutability and the action is in the physical world. But you are in your consciousness is static. While a fundamental or static unification with the cosmic self is possible, the active dynamic unification with cosmic nature must be incomplete, not full power, only part power. On the level of mind and life, even with the loss of the sense of separate existence, the energisms must be in their very nature a selection through individualization. Now, very often they use the word energism. Okay, what does it mean? The limited action of an energy which is infinite, a finite energy. When I am knocking a nail into a wall, it's an energism. Okay, my vast energy, I am using only a small bit of it to do that work. Okay? So the energism, energy is a cosmic, energism is a limited, very, very purposeful action. That's an energism. So we're saying the energisms, because you can have many types of actions, must be in their very nature a selection through individualization. So when Sridhar uses the word selection, he means reducing the vast to a small quantity. Selected. There's a vast array, and you're selecting a small portion of it for your action. Okay? The remains nature, very nature is selection through individualization. The action is that of a cosmic energy, but the individual formation of it in the living dynamo remains the method of its working. So when it wants to work, it enters into the individual and does its work. Energism. For the very use of the dynamo of individuality is to select, to concentrate and formulate selected energies and throw them out in formed and canalized currents. Now, what he's saying is very interesting. This vast energy which is there, it enters into, let us say, 10 minds. Okay? It enters into 5 of you are there, and I am the 6th one. Okay? And it enters into all of us, and the effect will be different. The effect of that energy entering into you, we will all react in different ways, and we'll also throw out in different ways with the universe. That is the principle of multiplicity in the physical world. It can never be the same for everybody. So the one becoming the many, you must remember that principle, then it's very easy to understand what he's saying. Okay. So for the very use of the dynamo of individuality is to select, to concentrate and formulate, give form to, okay, selected energies and throw them out in formed and canalized currents. So when Sridhar is throwing out his ideas of the supermind, okay, he is doing exactly this. He is throwing them out in formed and canalized currents. When someone gets an idea that a mobile is possible to be created and he creates it, he is doing the same. He is forming the thought and throwing it out into the universe in canalized currents. The flow of a total energy would mean that this dynamo had no further use. So what he's saying is the entire energy in the cosmos cannot enter into an individual. And if it did enter into an individual, then what's the use of the individual? He need not be there. So precisely the function of an individual is to ensure multiplicity. It's very interesting what he's saying. Just think about it. The one becoming the many in the universe. If the one remained the one, then there will be no diversity, there will be no variation. But variation is necessary because you can enjoy things in so many different ways. Okay, so naturally, multiplicity is a principle in the physical world, and all of us are dynamos for multiplicity. Each one we are reacting in different ways. Then this dynamo had no further use, could be abolished or put out of action. Instead of an activity of individual mind, life, body, there would be only an individual but impersonal center or channel through which the universal forces would flow unimpeded and unselective. So when you have entered into cosmic consciousness, your ego has disappeared. You are not limited anymore. So the whole universe is acting with you and you have become that. Now the individuality has disappeared. That's what he's saying. Okay? This can happen, but it would imply a higher spiritualization far exceeding the normal mental level. In the static seizure of the cosmic knowledge by identity, not the two words, static and seizure. Okay? He often uses the word, you have to possess the divine and the divine has to possess you. It's a seizure. It seizes you and you have to seize the divine. In the static seizure of the cosmic knowledge by identity, the subliminal, universalized, may feel itself one with the cosmos, with the cosmic self, and the secret self of all others. You will feel yourself one with everybody else. But the dynamization of that knowledge would not go farther than a translation of the sense of identity into a greater power and intimacy of direct contact or consciousness with all. In other words, I can know your thoughts, but I can't mold them. I can't force you to think like me. Okay? I can know your thoughts, I can know your feelings, but my power is limited. That's what he's saying. A greater, more intimate, more powerful and efficient impact of the force of consciousness on things and persons. Capacity too of an effective inclusion and penetration. Inclusion and penetration. You are including everybody in your own consciousness and you are penetrating into every consciousness. The principle, one in the many, many in the one. Okay? Of a dynamized, intimate vision and feeling and other powers of cognition and action proper to this larger nature. So that completes and we have also completed our time. You can read this carefully again, and that's why I read the summary first. In very short, the universe and the individual are constantly exchanging thoughts, emotions, and physical actions also. We are exchanging all the time. The universe is entering into you, you are entering into the universe. But at our level, we know nothing about it. When you go into the intraconscious, you start knowing something about it. And when you go even higher up, then it's possible to make this interaction complete. And that's the divine is there on top and he has got complete power. So if you become the divine, then your power also will be infinite. Okay, so that completes the next in the subliminal, therefore. Next time we'll read that. Okay? Okay, you can make a note.
Yes, I'll make a note.
Merci beaucoup.
Okay,
Thank you,
over.
Rangada.
Thank you,
Have a nice
Rangada.
day. Yes,
Thank you, Rangada. Blessing.
Shiv.
Arivar.